Last weekend, three individuals I consulted with were able to uncover their ancestors' records and the tribes they belong to, thanks to my personalized guidance. Unlock the secrets of your family history with a genealogy consultation. Whether you're just starting out or need help with the tribal citizenship process, I'm here to guide you every step of the way. As a Black Native American and a proud member of the Muskogee Creek Nation, I offer a unique, personalized approach to genealogy, tailored to your specific needs and stage in your journey. Reconnect with your roots and uncover the rich history of your ancestors. To book a consultation, email me at mike@keymediapro.com with the subject line genealogy.
Possible privilege.
We gods, man. We kings, man. We lords.
I was born black, I live black, and I'm gonna die probably because some cracker that knows I'm black better than you, nigga, is probably gonna put a bullet in the back of my head.
This is the remix. My father was raised in the era when black niggas couldn't claim Native American.
Aborigines, which means what? Black folks. But you never find a white aborigine. Rather, aborigines are called natives, or they're always dark-skinned people. You and I are aborigines, but you don't like to be called an aborigine. You want to be called an American. Aborigine actually means from the beginning. Two Latin words, ab meaning from, origine meaning the beginning.
Great shock around the age of 5 or 6 or 7 to discover the flag to which you have pledged allegiance, along with everybody else, has not pledged allegiance to you. It comes as a great shock to discover that Gary Cooper killing off the Indians when you were rooting for Gary Cooper, that the Indians were you. That the Indians were you. It comes as a great shock to discover that the country, which is your birthplace, and to which you owe your life and your identity.
Remember that big Indian dude in that movie? Mm-hmm. He was cool. And then he couldn't talk unless he was talking about gum.
Yeah. You know, I think you're not supposed to say Indian either.
No way, really?
Yeah. I think you're supposed to call them African Americans.
Oh, you're shoemakers now. And more importantly, you're a person of color. You're no longer a Nipmuc person. And that shows through in these county histories and also in the census records at the time. You find a person described in the 1860 census as an Indian. In the 1870 census, they're described as a person of color or a colored person. Same person, but the census taker, as part of the white dominant society, decides that this person is no longer Nipmuc.
Since y'all always screaming about DNA, watch what the biology professor says about DNA. Watch this.
Smith's breakdown from Ancestry showed 97% European and 2% Asian.
I'm a black girl. I am not a Jewish white lady. I'm black. My parents were black.
She contacted Ancestry with questions, but says a rep told her the results are accurate.
These DNA tests for ethnicity are entertainment value only.
William Gilliland is a biology professor at DePaul. He says DNA kits can be great for connecting family members and finding relatives, but the science for ethnicity testing isn't as concrete.
There's nothing that confident for ethnicity. There's no diagnostic nucleotide. You can say this person is from Europe, this person's from Africa.
You see that? DNA can't tell you where you're from. A scholar tells the truth. Watch this.
But many African Americans, you are the Native Americans. You're not even African Americans, you're Native Americans. You're the ones that they brought blankets with, was it smallpox or whatever diseases, and wiped out entire communities because they said they came in peace, but they actually came in war. And they are still warring us right until this day. So there are those beloveds of you who really don't feel any connection to Mama Africa. And this is just, you know, a confirmation, a reassurance that America belongs to you.
So Africans know this history, but nobody else does? Come on, make it make sense.
free in me. And so with the help of my wife, we extracted enough saliva to send off in the mail. We were so excited to see the results. After about 3 months, we were shocked. My lizard was 51% Ashkenazi Jewish. He was also 48% West Asian. This was really interesting. They also gave us a little bit of his background and his history, what he liked to eat, etc. Let us know which animal's DNA we should send in next.
You don't have to try to be something you're not.
Trying to be something I'm not? Trying to be proud of my African heritage? That's being something I'm not, then fine.
My grandmother was a full-blooded Iroquois.
I know all of that, Mama.
They don't know this. I am alive because of the blood of a people who never scraped or begged or apologized for what they were. They asked only one thing of this world, to be allowed to be. It broke my heart when you changed your name. I gave you my grandmother's name, a woman who bore 9 children and educated them all, who held off 6 white men with a shotgun when they tried to drag one of her sons off to jail for not knowing his place. And you had to reach into an African dictionary to find a name that would make you proud.
My father was raised in the era when black niggas couldn't claim Native American. Making music would've thought I had help, but the Indians I know wanna be the chief they self.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, let me get some fists and feathers in the chat if you can hear me loud, crisp, and clear, and we'll get this party started. This live stream is meant to do one thing, and that's expose to you all the forgotten history of the Black American Indians that built this country, the greatest country in the world. It was built, the soil was toiled by the blood, sweat, and tears of Black Indians. I mean, we have Black Indians a part of the 13 colonies since their inception. We have Black Indians fighting in the Revolutionary War. We have Black Indians fighting in the Civil War. We have, well, hold on. Black Indians fighting in the Revolutionary War. Guys, it's funny that I talk about the Revolutionary War because did you guys know that the catalyst for the Revolutionary War was a Black Indian? Did you guys know that the main rallying cry why the colonies decided to rebel and separate from Britain, did you know it was over the mistreatment of a Black Indian? Guys, we all heard in school about the Boston Massacre, right? Who was the first victim of the Boston Massacre? That was Crispus Attucks. Crispus Attucks, a sailor of mixed African and indigenous descent, died in Boston on March 5th, 1770, after British soldiers fired 2 musket balls into his chest. His death and that of 4 other men at the hands of the 29th Regiment became known as the Boston Massacre. Death instantly transformed Attucks from an anonymous sailor into a martyr for a burgeoning revolutionary cause. Yes, we're talking 1770. We have a free Black Indian man. I know it says mixed African descent, but guys, we all know about the reclassification, right? Since the 16th century, they were reclassifying Black Indians as Negroes and placing them on plantations. So when they say African ancestry, I mean, we have to look at that with a bombastic side eye, to say the least. But regardless, this was basically the George Floyd of that time. We got a Black Indian being seen as a martyr, and people are using his unjust death as a rallying cry to revolt, a rallying cry for revolution. Come on, we all know about the free labor that the slaves provided, and guess what, guys? Many of those slaves were Black Indians. If you look up yourself the official narrative on the percentage of slaves that were trafficked from Africa to North America, they say that percentage is 4%. Not over 90% went to Brazil, South America, the Caribbean, but only 4% came to North America, and some argue what that 4% represents. The lowest end I've seen historians say is that reflects 92,000 African slaves being brought to North America. The highest number I've seen is 300,000 slaves brought from Africa to North America. Well, guys, we know that since the 1600s, Virginia passed an act, and Virginia was the crowning jewel of the colonies. Whatever happened in Virginia was going to happen in all the other colonies. Everybody else followed suit from what Virginia did, and Virginia passed the act that combined Native Americans and Africans into one category as Negroes and other slaves. So, guys, if we know that only 4% of Africans came to North America as slaves, and we know that that 4%, playing devil's advocate, that represents about 300,000 people, right? And modern day, we have over 50 million Black Americans in the US of A. Well, damn, doesn't it make sense that a lot of us are Black Indians and don't even know it? I've been doing genealogy consultations with folks all week, and we're finding members on the Dawes roll listed as freedmen, some of them half-blood, some of them full-blood. But regardless, we're seeing documentation, genealogy paper records that points to Black Americans being indigenous, not African. When the Emancipation Proclamation happened and these free slaves are now regarded as freedmen, freedmen don't mean African. A lot of these slaves that were Black Indians and got reclassified as Negroes, well, all these years down the road, when they're finally emancipated generations later, hey, they're calling them freedmen now. Freedmen don't mean African. But let's go ahead and get into it, guys. I mean, Black natives built this country. That the founding fathers took inspiration from Black indigenous tribes, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence. I mean, guys, put a 1 in the chat if you are unfamiliar with the fact that our government modeled our ruling structure off of the Indians. And you guys know me as the king of receipts, so let me go ahead and pull up a receipt if I can. It says here, the Confederation of the original 13 colonies into one republic was explicitly modeled upon the Iroquois Confederacy, as were many of the democratic principles which were incorporated into the Constitution itself. Yeah, you heard that right. It was a confederation of 13 colonies. They're each separate. They're doing their own thing. And now they become one public for which it stands, one nation under God, yada, yada. You know how the story goes. And they got that from the natives. This is the Iroquois Confederacy, the Mohawk, the Onelda, the Seneca, the Cayuga, the Onondaga. These tribes were independent. These tribes were their own sovereign nations, but still they came together. They collectivized as the Iroquois Confederacy, and the Europeans saw that and ran with it. And speaking of Europeans, speaking of reclassification of Indians into Africans and placed on plantation, I mean, guys, playing devil's advocate once again, they say 300,000 African slaves came to North America. Guess what? Do you know how many European slaves came to North America? 300,000. Let's take a look at some receipts, shall we? Let's do a little bit of reading, shall we? I mean, reading is oh so fundamental after all.
Butterfly in the sky, I can go twice as high. Take a look, it's in a book, a reading rainbow. I can go anywhere, friends to know and ways to grow, a reading rainbow. I can be anything. Take a look, it's in a book, a reading rainbow. A reading rainbow. A reading rainbow. A reading rainbow. A reading
Oh, yes, they say 300,000 European slaves came over to the colonies. This excerpt is from a book called White Cargo. It's about the forgotten European slaves in America. It says here, the forgotten story of the thousands of white Britons who lived and died in bondage in Britain's American colonies. In the 17th and 18th centuries, more than 300,000 white people were shipped to America as slaves. Urchins. Guys, if you don't know, an urchin is a poor homeless kid. You know, think London, you know, chimney sweeper, orphan Annie type stuff. That's an urchin. Urchins were swept up from London streets to labor in the tobacco fields where life expectancy was no more than 2 years. Damn. Look at how they was enslaving their own fellow European. They took homeless youth off the streets of London and sent them to the tobacco fields to die. Life expectancy no more than 2 years. Brothels, aka whorehouses. Brothels were rated to provide breeders for Virginia. Yeah, guys, go ahead and tap your white neighbor on the shoulder and let them know that maybe they should do their genealogy. Maybe they should hit Mike up to get their genealogy done, not because they might have aboriginal lineage, but maybe because they may have a misconception that their people came over on the Mayflower and really your ancestor was a whore in a whorehouse in London who got kidnapped and sent to Virginia as a breeder on the plantation. I mean, Lord, damn. Fact is stranger than fiction, ain't it? Hopeful migrants were duped into signing as indentured servants, unaware they would become personal property who could be bought, sold, and even gambled away. Transported convicts were paraded for sale like livestock. Damn, y'all, we got so many depictions of black folks and slave auctions and shit on the chopping block. Why don't they show us any images of these European slaves in America being gambled away, paraded like livestock? Damn, why did the Roots movie, why did 12 Years a Slave, why did it not show any white whores from London on the plantation popping out babies from Massa? I mean, all right, guys, truth is stranger than fiction. But again, this broadcast is about how Black Indians built America, so let's get on with the show.
It's the same hustle, it's the same thing, same tears on the we take. Maybe one day we'll see we're one big family, like it's one channel. Same sunshine, same rain, same struggle, just to maintain. Maybe one day we'll see we're one big family, like it's one channel. Somebody found working fingers to the bone.
Greetings and welcome to An American Deception, revealing America's dark-skinned past. I'm your host, Tavis Sanders. I'd like to welcome our co-host, Renee Sanders.
Greetings.
So today we wanted to give you an overview of Indeed, a nonprofit organization established to educate the public of the omitted history of the dark-skinned indigenous peoples of the southeastern United States. As a part of Indeed's mission, we've created An American Deception. An American Deception was built to educate the public. And so let's talk about some of the services that we offer through Indeed.
Okay, one of the things that we offer are educational presentations. These educational presentations are, again, to inform the public about the dark-skinned indigenous people of southeastern United States. First one is called the Mound Builders. And the Mound Builders is explaining about the people that were here before the Europeans arrived, the different types of mounds that they built, which were conical mounds, platform mounds, and the effigy mounds, which were the mounds that were in the shapes of animals or some kind of a religious symbol or figure.
I know they also called them dirt pyramids.
Some of the mounds were called dirt pyramids because some of them have flat sides. And the ones that are flat-sided, they do call them pyramids. They're four-sided, and there's also some five-sided ones. But most.
Yes, guys, fun fact, there are more pyramid structures across the Americas than there is in Africa.
Most of them really, they look like mountains or hills.
Okay.
And those were mounds. And as a matter of fact, when Europeans arrived here, they really didn't realize that they were built by the indigenous people here. So many of them were destroyed. And this is one of the things that we discuss in the Mound Builders.
Okay, I know that you said we have a few educational presentations. I know one of them is called the Native American Slave Trade. Who were the real slaves? Can you give us a little bit of information about that?
Yes, the Native American slave trade is something that they really leave out of the history books, where they don't discuss how the indigenous people here in the United States were used as slaves. As a matter of fact, they were the first slaves here in the United States. And the African slave trade was really built on top of the Native American slave trade. So this is one of the things that we discuss in.
Come on, think about it. That's why barely any African slaves came to North America. The vast majority went to Brazil, South America, the Caribbean, because why would the Europeans in North America need to import slaves when they already have all these natives that they've defeated and taken in as prisoners of war?
In that, who were the real slaves, because once you really delve into that, you would really find out that many of those dark-skinned people that were enslaved, many of them were the indigenous native people of the United States.
We have one more educational presentation entitled Brown, Black, and White, Race and Native Americans. Could you just give me a brief overview?
Yes, that one is really talking about the race laws that were here in the United States. And it is showing how laws were used against the indigenous people to turn them into something that they were not. So it turned the indigenous people into Negroes. Negroes became equivalent to slave. Slave became equivalent to African.
Let's talk about it, guys. This is how we get reclassified from Indian to African and modern day African American. Damn, y'all, I gotta run that back. I don't think y'all really heard the sister. I don't think y'all really heard the elder. Just go ahead and take a seat, open up your ears, and listen to that one more time. For some reason, they want to make us think we all come from Africa, but from day one, they were reclassifying Indians.
It turned the indigenous people into Negroes. Negroes became equivalent to slave. Slave became equivalent to African, which now made all the indigenous people now Africans. And many of them now are calling themselves African Americans, but they're really indigenous to the United States.
And so you're talking about the Black population also. That's another term that we use to identify ourselves.
Yes, that's correct, yes.
So we offer educational presentations, and those are the titles of the three. We offer them in various ways. We have the presentations that we actually do inside of schools, libraries, and museums. And we also have a documentary series that we offer the programs through.
Okay, along with the presentations and the DVDs that we do offer about those presentations, we also have what we call community beautification that we do here in the city of Philadelphia. We feel that it is important to give back to the communities. And it is important for us to show that example to the neighborhoods also, so that hopefully they will join us in beautifying and keeping our neighborhoods clean and keeping them proud of where they live.
Yeah, and just to touch on that subject, I know when we do go out and do the cleanups, we have a lot of elders and actually a lot of the young children. They come and participate when we're doing them on their blocks or in a park near their home. And it really does seem to put a sense of pride in something that they've done to accomplish in their neighborhood.
Yes, and we don't even have to ask them to come out. We don't even solicit. We just go there and we start cleaning up, and the people see that and they come out and join us.
Okay. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. So I know we have a short version of our educational documentary, The Mound Builders. I'd like for them to take a look at that, and we'll be right back.
Greetings, I'm your host, Red Tail. Welcome to an introduction to The Mound Builders, the first in a four-part series entitled An American Deception. We'll see you in a few minutes.
Damn, I thought we were supposed to be savages.
From very light to the darkest of dark have existed.
Y'all, I thought we were supposed to be savages, but you telling me we were building variations of pyramid structures, had thriving civilizations, governmental bodies, we cultivated the land, we had tobacco plantations, cotton plantations, and we didn't have to enslave one another to have them work on those plantations. I mean, that came later with some tribes they call civilized, but we'll touch on that on another stream. I mean, we've got a rich history here in America, and we see that all those folks fled Europe coming over here because they saw it as the land of opportunity, and this land was developed, the foundation was laid by Black Indians.
American deception. We'll see you in a few minutes.
Brown-skinned people, from very light to the darkest of dark, have existed in the Americas continuously for many thousands of years. Writer Jack Force, in his book Africans and Native Americans, said, "Many, but not all, Native Americans were brown or dark-colored without African ancestry. These brown-skinned people lived here long before the dawn of European civilization and the arrival of the European settlers. When the Europeans arrived to the shores of the United States, they encountered a culture of people that became known as the Mound Builders. Mound Builder is a general term referring to the indigenous inhabitants of North America who built various styles of earthen mounds for burial.
That's right. We didn't live in no teepees. We lived in houses. Look at the pitched roofs. Look at the chimneys. Look at the homes of the leaders sitting on top of the platform pyramid structures. You know who lived in teepees? The Mongolian Asian looking natives that are over on the southwestern plains. But the Black Indians were on the southeastern plains. They were the woodland people. They were the mound builders. And we didn't live in teepees. We lived in homes and thriving communities.
Residential and ceremonial purposes. Here you see a sampling of mound sites that have been discovered in the United States. These mounds are primarily visible from the Mississippi River to the Appalachian Mountains, from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. Most are located along rivers and streams, which the
Damn, this looks like some Stargate SG-1 type shit, don't it? This looks rather thriving and advanced to me. I mean, I thought we were supposed to be in loincloth, living hand to mouth, being hunter-gatherers. Nah, it looks like we were thriving.
Native Americans used for provisions. The most modern Native American cultures have been divided into three eras. The Archaic era, from 8000 BCE, or before the Christian era, to 1000 BCE. The Woodland era, from 1000 BCE to 1000 CE, or the Christian era. And the Mississippian era, from the years 1000 to 1700. And there is evidence of mound builders in all three eras. The mound builders have been attributed to building four basic types of mounds. The most common mounds are the conical mounds. Conical mounds are mounds that are cone or oval shaped. Many of these types of mounds were for burial purposes. Burial mounds ranged in height from 3 feet to 25 feet, and the remains were probably of someone of importance in the society. Conical mounds that weren't burial mounds can have heights up to 70 feet. The second type of mound is the earthen mound or earth lodge. This type of mound usually had a fire pit in the center and was used for important meetings amongst the chiefs. The Europeans, after their arrival, utilized these mounds by turning them into their military.
They did what? They took over our mound pyramid structures and they turned them into military bases. They turned them into forward operating bases, if you will. Shout out to all my veterans. If you know, you know. Guys, they took our structures and used them as a staging ground to take over the rest of the country. Damn.
Forts, amongst other things. The third type of mounds are effigy mounds. Effigy mounds are mounds that are in the shape of animals, symbols, religious, or human figures. These mounds may have served as territorial markers or enhanced sacred ceremonial ground where people met for major events. Modern Native American shaman or spiritual healers suggest that the effigy mounds enhanced the power for healing and communication with the ancestor spirits. The last type of mound is the platform mound. Platform mounds, or temple mounds, are flat-topped mounds which were used to house temples for the leaders, for ceremonial purposes, sometimes for residences, and sometimes for survival needs such as observing up and down the waterways for unwanted visitors.
Welcome back. Even here in Philadelphia, there are remnants of these great and ancient structures. I stand now at the step of Philadelphia's famous landmark, the Philadelphia Museum of Art.
And yes, they went and built a museum on top of our indigenous mound structures. Some of the mounds still exist undisturbed in Mississippi. You guys can Google the Mississippi mounds, but in Philadelphia, they built a museum on top of it. You wouldn't even know that that was an indigenous structure.
But did you also know that this historic location, which the museum now occupies, was once called Fairmount by the colonial settlers? Up until the time of colonial settlement, this land belonged to the indigenous Americans. And if the mound would have remained undisturbed, it would have been classified as a platform mound today. In 1812, an engine house was built at the bottom of Fairmount to pump water from the Schuylkill River to the top. This later became known as the Fairmount Waterworks. In 1919, the mound began its most recent transformation into what is now known as the Philadelphia Museum of Art. You have just finished watching the first in the 4-part series entitled An American Deception. For more information, please email us at anamericandeception@gmail.com.
We'll be right back with An American Deception on Philly Cam.
Welcome back to An American Deception.
I don't know, y'all. Let's get into it, y'all. Let's get into it. Let's get into it. We just seen some black natives at the powwow. Them didn't look like no Mongols to me. Come on.
Revealing America's dark-skinned past. In the first segment, we went over the history of Indeed and some of the services that we offer to the community. But I'd like to ask you now, what about history and why do you think that is important?
I think it's important because it has been left out of the history books. The history of the dark-skinned indigenous people here in the United States has not really totally been revealed. Any place where history is told, they seem to eliminate the dark-skinned indigenous people here. So it is important for the people here in the United States, everyone, for them to know this history so that some of these dark-skinned people who are labeling themselves maybe as African American may find out that they are not actually African American, but that they are Indian, really, or indigenous to this land, Native Americans, or however you want to, whatever terminology that you are comfortable with.
Yeah, I kind of look at it like if you leave a large block of history out of the books that people are educated on, turn those people into something else, something that fits the status that the people that are writing these books want to fit these people as. You can identify them as being this because you remove the history of who they really are.
Exactly. And when people begin to realize that that term Negro, which was defining the dark-skinned people here in the United States, was also including a population of people who were here already.
Facts. We get back to the reclassification. Guys, if you're new to the broadcast, smash the like button, share the video, hit the Cash App or the PayPal if you support the mission, and we will be right back after a quick word from our sponsor. World of ambiance with scented candles. Before I start my live streams, I set the perfect mood by lighting a couple of these beauties. Crafted with precision using a formula passed down from a foundational Black American woman to her partner, each candle is a masterpiece, blending essential oils and natural fragrances seamlessly. I frequent this brother's eBay store not just for his candles, but also for his range of quality products. Support a Black-owned business and elevate your space with handmade scented candles delivered straight to your door. Click the link in the description and embrace the power of ambiance.
So the native people, the indigenous people of the United States, many of them were dark-skinned people. Dark-skinned, some of them had woolly hair. It is not the depiction that we see now of what they want us to think that how the Native Americans looked. And these people have been left out of history.
And I like to bring it up to speed today too, because when you learn where you're from, you start to care more about that environment. And as Black people, especially in the inner cities, we see a very, very big discrepancy between the neighborhoods that they live in and who they really want to be. Everybody wants to go back to where they think that they came from, and so they don't care about what's happening here as much.
Yes, exactly. And when people can when people can connect those dots to a history, to a real history that that doesn't stop at 1860. You have a history that connects people to this landmass for thousands of years. Yes, exactly. They will begin to take more pride in this land because now they know where their roots are, that their roots haven't been taken away from them, that they were stolen from them, but now they can reclaim them again. And that's why we think this is important for this information to come out.
Right. And, we just like to identify also that, a lot of the information that you'll be getting from us, you'll also be able to find them. We want to make sure that we're not just giving you information, but we're giving you factual information. I know that Napoleon stated that history was a myth that men tend to agree upon. And I really don't like that. I don't like that history is a myth that is created by the writer.
Yes, history, one of the definitions of history is that it defines who you are and why you are the way you are. So if you don't know your history, you cannot truly know who you really are.
Well, yeah, I totally agree with you. But, let's talk about that point for a moment, because I know in a lot of magazines, I know on some television programs, even some of the programs that trace people's heritage will, the individual initially say, I heard that I have Native American in my blood. And then when they go through the program or the DNA test, or the individual does ancestry trait on that individual, they will move them away from that.
Well, again, I think you have to be very, very careful when you're going with those things. And again, because the people who are doing them may not really know the actual history, and they are going by maybe colonial laws that said that that if you have one drop of African blood, then you are now a Negro. But the problem is that some of those people who are being defined as African were not African at all. They were defined that because of the laws that made slave an African equivalent. So what happened was these laws, again, turned these people into something that they were not.
And now that you've changed the individual to something, or you've relabeled them or reclassified them or re-identified who they are, And now it gets back to today, where a group of people can't really relate to what they're being taught. And so since I can't relate to the individual or to the culture that is being taught to me about who I am or where I'm from, if the culture exists at all. And so they move away from their community, they move away from family and respect to the elders, and they become distracted with whatever it is that they can get themselves involved with that'll make themselves feel better about what they're doing because we've lost who we are.
Yes, and that was one thing that that especially in the early 1900s and in the 20th century, that Black people were trying to identify with something. And we know that Black people have been told that you have Native American in your blood, you have that Indian in your
Come on, y'all. We've heard from our elders that we got Indian in our family. Grandma never told us we from Africa, though, right? Come on. Over 90% of the African slaves went to South America, Brazil, the Caribbean. That's why they have a rich African culture to this day. They're eating jollof rice and fufu and everything. A lot of African population in those areas to this day. You can see their distinctly African phenotype. But us, we different.
blood. And we have heard this, and many Black families have heard that. And we've heard that because our ancestors did not want us to forget that. And they couldn't write it down because it was against the law for them to write it down. So they had to pass this history down orally.
Right.
And we have that oral history. However, because the history books wanted to turn us into something else, then we can no longer identify with that. And this is what history has done. It has turned us into something that our ancestors told us that we were not. But now we are believing, because in the past 50 years, we've been told we're African American. So now we tend to believe that's what we are.
And in actuality, we may be something else.
Yes.
And a large portion of us, even if we choose to identify ourselves as African American, you should still know the whole history of who you are, the full history and the factual history about who you are, where you came from, and how to relate the two cultures into one.
Yes, and again, because if you were told that you have Native in your blood, that Native is still there.
All right. Well, we like to wrap it.
And the only way that you can find that out is through paper trail genealogy, not no ancestry.com DNA test, not no 21andMe. Come on, y'all. Paperwork. The paperwork's out there. I've been meeting with people all week, and we're finding records on their family going back to the early 1800s. Guys, the paper trail is out there. Trust me.
But for right now, we'll be back with more of An American Deception. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back with more of An American Deception on Philly Can.
Today, a more accurate depiction of the Native Americans of the United States is beginning to unfold. Because history has been told to us by Europeans with a European point of view, we have, up until recently, been given our historical facts in a distorted manner. Author Carol Birkin, in her book First Generations, explains that historians have come to understand that they must handle journals, government reports, sermons, books, and diaries written by Europeans about Native Americans cautiously, as artifacts of European adjustment to cultural diversity rather than true guides to Indian societies. This European adjustment has given us a distorted view,
and has allowed many misconceptions and inaccuracies to be perpetrated. Case in point, most people believe that the existence of dark-skinned people in the United States began with the African slave trade. The truth is, as writer Jack Forbes expresses in his book Africans and Native Americans, many but not all Native Americans were of a dark complexion without African ancestry. Truth be told, it was the Native American slave trade that placed many dark-skinned people into slavery. And to keep these facts in obscurity, many books evade the subject of the Native American slave trade. William L. Katz, in his book Black Indians, says it eloquently when he states that omission, not distortion, is the far more serious culprit in hiding the story of the Black Indians of the Americas.
Come on, y'all. Some people be leaving me strange comments in the comments section, making it seem like I created the term Black Indians. No, Black Indians have been in America since time immemorial, and people have been documenting it.
At the time of European contact, there were dozens of chiefdoms scattered across the South, one so large that it spanned from present-day eastern Tennessee to northern Georgia and eastern Alabama. After Hernando de Soto and other explorers encountered these chiefdoms, many became unstable via diseases, warfare, and slavery. Although many attribute the demise of many native people to diseases that they did not have natural immunities to, one must examine forces other than disease, in particular, the commercial trade in Indian slaves, to the termination of many southern clans, tribes, and chiefdoms. As the European arrived to the shores of America, they began utilizing the native people to help build their colonies. The Native Americans welcomed
Come on, guys. From day one, they're using us to build their colonies. Tell me we didn't build America from the ground up. We were already living here. We already paved the roads and the different trails and the paths that we carved out. We already had thriving indigenous cities in New York, San Francisco. The list goes on. And we're so benevolent, we're even helping build these settlers, their little towns and stuff. Come on. Where would these Europeans be without us? Oh yeah, the Pilgrims would have starved out and died. That's right.
Neighbors, and using the words of writer Alan Gallet, Indians secured the colonies against external and internal foes while providing the economic wherewithal for each colony's survival. He goes on to say they, the Native Americans, chose not to conquer the Europeans. He says warfare was conducted for specific cultural and geopolitical purposes, and the removal of the European colonies did not meet those ends. The Europeans were not as cordial to their new neighbors.
Come on, y'all. We were too chill. We said, hey, we have an abundance of land. If you guys want to live over here in this crappy part of town we don't want, okay, go ahead. We ain't gonna beef with you. And them settlers came. We taught them how to farm, how to hunt, how to survive. And then once they got all the knowledge, once they got the lay of the land, they came to take it over.
The Europeans, beginning with Christopher Columbus, began enticing and tricking the native population into servitude. And as I have previously stated, Christopher Columbus initiated the transatlantic slave trade by transporting thousands of Native Americans to Spain to become slaves in the Mediterranean slave trade.
That's right. The first slaves in the transatlantic slave trade wasn't no slaves from Africa. It was Aboriginals of America being sent to Spain.
Slavery was considered a part of any expedition of discovery and conquest. So as stated in Indian slavery during colonial times, not to follow such a custom would have been acting contrary to the spirit of the times. During exploring expeditions in America, leaders like Hernando de Soto and Ponce de Leon needed a means to reward the services of their soldiers. Since other means of payment were scarce, slavery satisfied this need. And again, using the words of writer Almond Wheeler Lauber from his book Indian Slavery During Colonial Times, many of the exploring expeditions were slave raids or kidnapping excursions. The captured women were distributed amongst the soldiers and used in whatever manner the soldiers saw fit, which means many of those women were raped. The captured men assisted in whatever menial tasks needed to be done, such as mining, fishing, paddling, hunting, cutting wood, and of course, building houses. Slave raids became common in the South, and most slaves were basically kidnapped from their tribes. However, as more Europeans arrived, kidnapping was no longer a viable system of obtaining the number of slaves that was needed to help build and maintain the new colonies. Warfare and trade became a more productive way to obtain slaves. Warfare was a way the Native Americans acquired captives before the arrival of the Europeans. These captives, which the Europeans confused with slaves, were used for specific purposes. They became a medium of exchange between tribes to purchase peace with a stronger tribe, make reparations for losses of war within a tribe, barter for war captives, amongst other things.
Come on, y'all, but the Europeans are quick to say, oh, the Indians were wild and they were warring with each other and the Indians had slaves too. Nah, we talking about something completely different.
Even though the Europeans used warfare as a means of obtaining slaves since their arrival in the Americas, by the late 16th century, early 17th century, it became practically the sole means of acquiring Native American slaves. The Native Americans then began to be enticed with European-made goods in exchange for any slaves they turned over to the Europeans. Native goods, such as hatchets, scissors, hoes, knives, etc., which were made from bone, stone, or wood, were inferior to the same tools manufactured by the European because theirs were made out of metal. These metal tools made work quicker and easier, so they became in big demand amongst the native people. Clothing, such as white linen shirts, petticoats, jackets, and woolen blankets, were also popular items to trade with the native population. The most valuable European goods were guns and ammunition.
Come on, y'all, let's talk about it. History is oh so nuanced. History is oh so nuanced. Why don't they want to talk about this? Why don't they want to talk about the 300,000 white slaves? Why don't they want to talk about the fact that America, even the colonies, were built by Indians, most of them melanated, that were warring with the Europeans, lost the battle, and then got enslaved? I mean, guys, when you understand our rich history in this country, it changes your perspective, to say the least. It changes your perspective. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, before we wrap up, I want to urge you to hit the like button, share the video. If you're watching the live stream here with us, don't go anywhere. As soon as this broadcast ends, it's going to redirect us into the next stream. So just hang tight for a moment. We've got a lot more content coming this evening, and I will see you guys in just a bit.